She paid a teenager $500 to humiliate me at my own son's graduation, so my son walked to that podium, folded his speech, and destroyed her in front of 600 people. I was standing under a red exit sign, holding the program with both hands so they wouldn't shake. The auditorium was packed with 600 people, all of them facing forward, all of them waiting for the processional music to begin. And I was at the back wall, in the shadows, because a woman I had never wronged decided that this, the morning of my son's graduation, was the day to draw blood. I had watched them take my seat. I had watched the usher walk me back here like I was a problem to be managed. And the whole time, Nicole sat in row B, seat 4, with her phone tilted at an angle that told me everything I needed to know. She was filming me. I stood straight. I did not cry. I didn't know what Tyler had planned. I didn't know what he'd written on the inside of his cap. I didn't know he'd been building something for 3 months that was about to detonate under the feet of everyone who had ever dismissed me in that boy's life. I was 44 years old, standing at the back of a room while strangers claimed my front row seat. And that is where this story begins. Not in my anger, but in the quiet. The particular quiet of a woman who has learned how to wait. My name is Karen Mills. I need you to understand something before I tell you the rest. Tyler was 8 months old when Daniel and I separated. Not divorced yet, just separated. Living in the same duplex we'd rented on Garfield Street in Columbus, Ohio. Him downstairs and me upstairs, sharing a refrigerator key and absolutely nothing else. The formal divorce came through in December of that year, 3 days before Christmas, on a Tuesday afternoon when I was already at my second job. Daniel got the car. I got Tyler and $1,200 a month in child support that he paid about 60% of the time. I was 26. I had a 2-year degree in medical administration. I knew how to stretch a dollar so thin you could read through it. The clinic job started at 5 in the morning. Exam rooms, supply carts, floors. I was home by 2:15, which gave me enough time to pick Tyler up from daycare, get him fed, run him through his homework once he was old enough to have homework, and then, after he was asleep, sit at the dining room table with the sewing machine that had belonged to my grandmother and start on the alterations pile. $4 a hem, $7 for a zipper replacement, $20 for a full suit alteration if the man had ordered it from overseas, and the measurements were a disaster, which they usually were. I averaged about $60 a night on good nights, $40 on slow ones. 12 years of that. Not a single real vacation in that time. One trip to my sister Megan's lake house for 4 days in the summer of 2019, which barely counted because I brought 2 pairs of trousers to hem and did them on her porch. Tyler never had the expensive sneakers. The ones the other boys had. The ones with the lit-up soles and the $160 price tags. He had library books and a mother who showed up to every single thing he ever did. Every school play, every soccer game, every science fair, every parent-teacher conference where a teacher told me he was exceptional and I thought, I know, I raised him to be. His father showed up to 2 events in 12 years. I'm not exaggerating that number. I went back through my photos once and counted. 2. Tyler's 5th grade talent show, where Tyler played a 30-second version of Hot Cross Buns on recorder, and Daniel stood in the back for 6 minutes before leaving. And Tyler's 14th birthday party, where Daniel stayed for cake and left before the presents. Both times, he posted photos on Instagram. Both times, the caption mentioned what a great dad he was. Daniel remarried in March of 2 years ago. Her name was Nicole. She was 31. She had 84,000 Instagram followers, a lifestyle brand called Nicole in Bloom, and a content strategy built entirely on aesthetics. Beautiful home, beautiful vacations, beautiful life, curated and captioned for people who wanted to believe that life could look like that. The first time I heard about her was when Tyler called me from Daniel's house and said, "Dad's girlfriend is here, and she keeps saying adorbs." I didn't think much of it then. The problems started small, the way they always do. Texts that didn't go through, or so Daniel claimed. I sent you the schedule. He hadn't. School events that were supposedly rescheduled then weren't. I'd show up to find the gym full, and Tyler already seated with his class, looking for me in the crowd. Once I arrived at a band concert on what I'd been told was the right date and found them setting up chairs for the following week's event, Tyler was embarrassed. He started texting me himself, double-checking every date. 14 years old, coordinating his own parents because one of them couldn't be trusted. I called my attorney, Diane, in September of that year. I described the pattern. She already knew the name Nicole from context. She opened a new folder and labeled it the Nicole folder. Document everything, Diane said. Every missed text, every wrong date. Screenshot the school calendar. Screenshot your messages. If it's a pattern, we'll prove it's a pattern. I documented everything. The Nicole folder was 81 pages by graduation day. One incident in particular I want you to remember. This was 8 months before graduation. Tyler's basketball team had made the regional semifinals. It was a Thursday night game, 6:30 tip-off at Worthington Hills High School. I had the date right. Tyler confirmed it himself, sent me the screenshot of the schedule from his coach's group chat. Nicole called me that morning. This was unusual. She almost never called me directly. "Hey Karen," she said. Her voice had that particular warmth that costs nothing. "Just checking that you know the game got moved to 7:30. Daniel forgot to tell you." I thanked her. I rearranged my clinic hours. I drove 40 minutes to Worthington Hills and arrived at 7:15 to find the game already in the third quarter. Tyler spotted me from the court. He looked like he wanted to disappear. The game had been at 6:30, as originally scheduled. I found out later from another parent that Nicole had been at the game. She'd arrived at 6:25 with her camera equipment and filmed filmed Tyler's warm-up. She'd posted it that night with a caption, "Bonus mom life. So proud of my guy." 3,700 likes. I hadn't been there for warm-up. I hadn't been there for the first half. I had been sitting in a parking lot in Worthington Hills because Nicole had called me with a wrong start time. I added it to the folder. The graduation ceremony was on a Saturday in late May. Tyler's school held it at the Meredith Performing Arts Center downtown, a venue with seating for 600 and a stage large enough for a full orchestra. Tyler had texted me the week before with specific instructions. Row B, seats 4 and 5. I saved them with cards. Come early. I asked him what he'd written on his cap. "You'll see," he said. "Front row, second from the aisle, best seats in the house." My sister Megan came with me. She'd driven 3 hours from Dayton to be there. I'd told her what the previous year had looked like. The pattern of small exclusions, the Nicole folder. Megan had a way of standing next to me in hard situations that felt like having a second spine. I needed that. We arrived at 9:45. The ceremony was at 11. That's how early I came. That's how seriously I took the instruction. 55 minutes before the auditorium even opened, Megan and I were in the lobby with coffee cups and Tyler's graduation program. The doors opened at 10. We walked in. The rows were filling slowly. Row A, then B. Seats 4 and 5 in row B were taken. Daniel sat in one. Nicole sat in the other. There was no confusion on their faces. They looked settled. They looked like people who had planned exactly this. On the floor, I could see what remained of Tyler's name cards, the ones he'd placed himself the morning prior, during the venue walkthrough that graduating seniors were given. One of them was torn cleanly in half. "Those were my seats," I said. Daniel looked at me with that particular flinch he'd been deploying for 20 years. Not quite guilt and not quite remorse. Something in between that he used to end conversations. "There was a mix-up," he said. "Nicole handled the seating." Nicole had her phone out. She did not look up. "Honey," she said, and she said it to Daniel, but her voice was pitched to Carrie. "His mom can watch from the back. She should be used to it by now." Then she laughed, light and easy, the laugh of a woman who has never had to fight for anything she wanted. I heard Megan make a sound behind me, low and involuntary. "Let me drag her out right now," Megan said quietly. "I will do it with a smile." "Don't," I said. "Not today." "Not here." That was when the teenage usher appeared. He couldn't have been older than 17. He looked apologetic and uncomfortable, and also slightly rehearsed. He said, "Ma'am, those seats are taken. You'll need to stand in the back." I looked at Nicole. She had finally put her phone down, but not all the way down. She tilted it at an angle. 45 degrees, camera facing me, still recording. She winked. I let the usher walk me to the back wall. I stood under the red exit sign. I held Tyler's graduation program in both hands. I did not cry. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known as I stood there in the shadows, was that 3 months earlier, a 16-year-old boy in the junior class had needed $500, and Nicole had needed someone with access to the auditorium the morning of the senior walkthrough. I didn't know about the Venmo transaction yet. I didn't know about the texts. Tyler did. The school resource officer's name was Marcus Webb. He'd worked at the school for 11 years. He knew Tyler. He'd watched Tyler grow from a freshman who lost his PE locker combination twice a week to a senior who tutored other students in calculus on Thursday afternoons. Officer Webb had been approached by Tyler in February. Not to make a complaint, Tyler had been specific about that. He didn't want a complaint filed. He wanted to understand what the rules were around the Performing Arts Center during senior walkthrough, who had access, what the camera coverage looked like, what kinds of incidents, if documented properly, might constitute something actionable. Officer Webb had answered his questions. He'd also quietly started paying attention. The thing about Nicole's plan, if you could call it a plan, was that it relied entirely on everyone around her being too embarrassed or too conflict-averse or too financially entangled with Daniel to say anything. It had worked before. Every rescheduled event, every wrong start time, every mix-up. It had worked because I had been alone in noticing and alone in caring and alone in the room. She had never once considered that Tyler noticed too. He'd been keeping his own records. Not at my prompting. I want to be precise about that. I never asked Tyler to document anything. I never complained to him about his father or Nicole beyond what I couldn't help. But Tyler was 17, and he had a mother who'd been working 2 jobs since before he could remember, and he was not blind. He had screenshots. Not of everything, but of enough. The Venmo record had come from a classmate, a junior named Devin, whose older brother was a friend of the boy Nicole had hired. $140 to intercept Tyler's name cards. Another $150 to confirm my seat location and relay it to Daniel before the doors opened. $210 to be present and redirect me if I made it to the row. $500 split across 3 payments, all from Nicole and Bloom's verified Venmo account, because Nicole had apparently not considered that Venmo transactions, by default, are public. Tyler had found them in March. He'd brought them to Officer Webb in April. Officer Webb had consulted with the principal. The principal had consulted with the district's legal team. And by May, 3 weeks before graduation, there was a quiet agreement in place that Tyler would be permitted to address the situation in whatever manner he chose, during his allotted time at the podium, as long as it was truthful and sourced. There was one other thing Tyler had: the surveillance footage from the walkthrough. The Performing Arts Center had cameras covering every entry point and the main auditorium floor. One of those cameras had a clear line of sight to row B. It showed, with time-stamped precision, Nicole removing 2 name cards from seats 4 and 5, tearing them, dropping them. Tyler had a copy. I didn't know Tyler was valedictorian until the principal said his name. He had not told me. Megan grabbed my arm. I couldn't speak. When Tyler walked across the stage to the podium, the auditorium erupted. All 600 people on their feet at once. The sound enormous and physical, the kind of applause you feel in your chest. Daniel stood first, the way he always stood first at things he hadn't earned the right to stand for. His chest was out. His hands were going. Nicole had her phone up for her 84,000 followers. Tyler did not look at his father. He did not look at Nicole. He looked straight to the back of the auditorium, past 600 people, past the program and the processional and the 600 proud faces between us. He looked at the back wall under the red exit sign and he found me. His eyes went cold, not at me. He was giving me a message. He wanted me to know something was about to happen. He picked up his speech, folded it in half, folded it again, slid it carefully into his gown pocket. 600 people went absolutely still. The silence was so complete I could hear the ventilation system. I had a speech prepared, Tyler said into the microphone. His voice was calm. It was the voice of someone who had rehearsed this more than the other speech. About gratitude, about the future, about the community that brought us here. He paused. I'm not giving that speech. In row B, Nicole slowly lowered her phone. The motion was small, almost involuntary. This morning, Tyler said, someone in this auditorium did something I will not forgive. Her smile did not fall away immediately. It took a few seconds. It became the shape of a smile without any of the components. The muscles underneath had stopped holding it. What remained looked like something drawn on, like a smile on a face that had forgotten how to feel the reason for one. Tyler reached into his gown. He pulled out a piece of white cardstock, his name in his own careful blue handwriting, torn neatly in half. He held it up to the microphone, close enough that the paper made a soft sound against the stand. My name was on this card, he said. It was on the seat I reserved for my mother, the woman who worked 2 jobs for 18 years so I could be standing on this stage. The room was not breathing. I have the security footage. He said it plainly, like he was reading from a list. I have the texts, and I have the Venmo transaction, the one showing $500 paid in 3 installments from Nicole and Bloom to a member of the junior class, to make sure my mother ended up at the back of this room. Nicole's mouth opened, not to speak, just opened. Daniel's face had gone the color of old concrete. In 30 seconds, Tyler said, everyone in this room is going to know the name of the woman who thought my graduation was an opportunity. Nicole grabbed her purse. The movement was fast and reflexive. She was on her feet before the sentence was finished, pushing toward the aisle. Officer Marcus Webb stepped smoothly into the center of the aisle and stood there, hands clasped, expression neutral, not blocking her with force, just standing, the way a man stands when he knows exactly where he is and why. Nicole stopped. Tyler leaned back into the microphone. Her name, he said, is Nicole Harmon Cole. She has 84,000 followers on Instagram and a lifestyle brand called Nicole and Bloom. For the past 2 years, she has systematically excluded my mother from my life. Wrong dates, rescheduled events that weren't rescheduled. And today, $500 to make sure my mother watched her own son's graduation from the back wall. He looked down at the torn card in his hand. My mother sewed alterations at midnight so I had lunch money. She drove me to every practice, every game, everything that ever mattered, and she never once asked me to thank her for it. He looked up. So I'm thanking her now? He looked straight to the back wall, straight at me. Mom, he said, front row was always yours. I'm sorry it took me this long to say that out loud. 600 phones rose at the exact same moment. The next 24 hours were a disaster that, depending on your vantage point, was either a catastrophe or a reckoning. Nicole was escorted out, not arrested. There was nothing immediately criminal about what she'd done, though Diane would later have a longer conversation about harassment statutes and the specific case for intentional infliction of emotional distress. She left the auditorium under Officer Webb's guidance, through a side exit, with her phone recording nothing for the first time all morning. Daniel followed her. He left his son's graduation before Tyler had walked across the stage to collect his diploma. I want to sit with that for a moment because it matters. Tyler gave that speech. He said what he said. He put every card on the table in front of 600 people and his own family. And his father's response was to collect his wife and leave. Tyler saw him go. Tyler watched the seat in row B empty out. He walked across that stage anyway. He collected his diploma and shook the principal's hand and found me in the crowd. Megan had already started pushing toward the front, and he held on for a long time, long enough that I stopped counting. I've been planning that since February, he said into my shoulder. I know, I said, which wasn't true, but felt like the right thing to say. What followed in the days after was the particular chaos of a video that goes viral before you've had time to process it. Someone in the audience had recorded Tyler's full speech on their phone. Good quality, the camera still, the audio clean. It was posted to Reddit by Tuesday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, it had 3 million views. By Thursday, it was on the morning news, 3 different local stations, 2 national morning shows calling for an interview that we declined. Diane called me Thursday. Nicole's attorney reached out, she said. Of course they did. She wants to discuss the characterization of events. The characterization, I repeated. There's footage, Diane confirmed. I've already sent them a copy of our 81-page file. I expect we won't hear much more from them. We didn't. Nicole and Bloom lost 22,000 followers in the first week. Brand partnerships went quiet. 3 companies that had been paying her for sponsored content simply stopped responding to emails. The lifestyle brand built on beautiful surfaces ran directly into a surface that wasn't beautiful, and the audience that had followed her for aesthetics had no framework for what they they'd seen. Daniel called me on Friday. I let it go to voicemail. His message lasted 4 minutes and 30 seconds. I played it once, took notes on one sentence. I want to be there for Tyler going forward, and sent the voicemail to Diane. She added it to a new folder. She hadn't named it yet. Tyler's response, when I told him his father had called, was 5 words. I'll talk to him eventually. That was it. No rage, no relief, just the flatness of a young man who had already done his accounting and arrived at a sum he could live with. The aftermath stretched over months in the way these things do. Megan stayed an extra 2 days. She slept on my couch and made coffee and let me talk when I wanted to, and didn't push when I didn't. The second morning, we sat at the kitchen table at 7:30 and I cried for the first time. Not about Nicole, not about Daniel, about Tyler. About the fact that my 17-year-old had spent months quietly building a case because he had understood, at an age when he should have been worrying about nothing but basketball and calculus, that no one else was going to protect me. I cried about that for a while. Megan let me. He's going to be okay, she said eventually. I know, I said, and I meant it. That was the strangest part. In the middle of everything, I knew that with a certainty I hadn't felt about many things in a long time. The legal situation developed slowly. There was no criminal charge for what Nicole had done. The payments to the junior student were unseemly but not illegal, and the harassment case had enough ambiguity that Diane advised me to wait and see what the civil picture looked like. What mattered more, practically, was the modification of the custody arrangement. Tyler was 18 in August. Legally, there was nothing left to modify, but the record existed, the 81 pages and the footage and the speech. If Daniel ever wanted to argue in any future context that he'd been a present and engaged parent, the record existed. I thought about what it would mean to pursue something legally against Nicole directly. Diane walked me through it, the costs, the timeline, the emotional tax of a deposition, discovery, sitting across a table from someone who had spent 2 years treating my son's life as a content opportunity. I thought about it for 2 weeks, then I let it go. Not forgiveness. I want to be clear about the difference. I didn't forgive Nicole. I don't, at this point in my life, feel the need to perform forgiveness for an audience. What I let go was the weight of having to pursue her. She had already lost things she couldn't get back. Her following, her partnerships, her image, the one that had cost her so much careful curation to build. She'd done that herself. She'd done it by underestimating me, and more specifically by underestimating my son. Daniel and Tyler eventually spoke. Once, in August, 3 weeks before Tyler left for Ohio State on a partial academic scholarship that I had helped him apply for over 4 consecutive evenings at this same kitchen table. They met for lunch downtown. Tyler came home and said it went fine. He didn't offer more detail. I didn't ask. There were people who surprised me with their kindness in the aftermath. The clinic manager, who I'd never told about any of this, who called me into her office the Thursday after the video went up and said simply, "I've been thinking about you." Parents from Tyler's class who texted or emailed. One woman I'd barely spoken to in 4 years of school events sent a card, a physical card, handwritten, that I still have in the drawer of my nightstand. There were also people who disappointed me, mutual friends who went quiet. Daniel's mother, whom I'd always maintained a civil relationship with, who stopped responding to texts. One of Tyler's aunts on Daniel's side who posted something vague and pointed on Facebook about children being weaponized in divorce situations. Tyler saw it. He was hurt by it for about 2 days and then decided not to be. I have rarely been prouder of a decision he's made. Tyler left for Columbus in August. OSU, computer science. The morning we loaded the car, he stopped in the doorway of his room and looked around at it for a long moment. I watched him from the hallway. "I'll paint it," I said. Finally, he laughed. "Don't paint over the measuring marks." There was a door frame in the kitchen where I'd been tracking his height since he was 4. The marks were in pencil, and some of them were smudged, and the highest one was from last October, 6'1". I had not painted over them. I never will. I drove home from Columbus that evening on the 70. The sun was doing something complicated with the clouds over the flat Ohio farmland, and I had the windows down because the AC in my car had stopped working properly in July, and I hadn't fixed it yet. I was alone in the car for the first time in a very long time. I thought about what Tyler had said at the podium, not the part about Nicole, though I had thought about that many times already, from many angles, and expected to keep thinking about it for years. I thought about the other part, the part where he said my mother sewed alterations at midnight so I had lunch money, and I thought about how I had never once thought of it as sacrifice. I thought of it as Tuesday. I thought of it as Wednesday. I thought of it as just the structure of the life we had, because that's what you do when someone needs you. You just do it, and you don't expect to be thanked for it in front of 600 people. You don't plan for that, but sometimes it happens. There is a specific category of grief I hadn't known how to name before all of this. It's the grief for what a family could have been, not what I wanted from Daniel. I had stopped wanting anything from Daniel a long time ago, and his departure from that auditorium had not surprised me. The grief is for Tyler, for what it would have meant for him to have a father who stayed, for what all those little exclusions added up to in the balance sheet of a boy's childhood, the way they told him, over and over, in the small language of wrong dates and taken seats, and a father who collected photos without staying for the memory, the way they told him that some people would not show up. He decided to show up anyway. That is the thesis of this story, if it has one. Not that justice was done, though something that looked like it passed through on its way to somewhere else. Not that I won, because what I won was a front row seat at my son's graduation that I'd already already been robbed of. What I have is this: a son who, at 17 years old, understood that some debts are worth paying in public, who kept quiet for months, built his case with the patience of someone twice his age, and then, in front of the people who had bet on his silence, spoke. I'm 44 years old. I work at the clinic. I still take alterations, though fewer of them now. The measuring marks are still on the doorframe in the kitchen. The graduation program, the one I was holding with both hands under the red exit sign, is in a frame on the wall above my sewing machine. My son is going to be fine. And I think, maybe for the first time since I was standing at the back of that room with my hands shaking, so am I.